So I want to go back down memory lane and share a little bit more about me. When I was a little girl in Pakistan, Dr. Borlaug was in my country endeavoring to end famine. He was doing so with the new varieties of miracle wheat that he cultivated in Mexico, which were at the heart of the Green Revolution. It took me 35 years to learn his name. What I didn't know was 35 years later, just as he impacted my country's future and saved it from famine, he would eventually impact my future trajectory. His journey is why we're really all here today, and I want to share with you the vision for DialogUENEXT, how it came to be, where we're headed, and reflecting on his remarkable contributions. The DialogUENEXT series traces his footsteps across diverse corners of the world, landmarks preserving his legacy by revisiting pivotal milestones like his time in Mexico, in India, in Pakistan, in Africa. We seek to inspire actionable solutions and create a positive change in our global food systems. DialogUENEXT, as you can see from this morning, it's about more than just a forum. It's a call to action, a commitment to taking that action across borders and finding solutions. So, our next stop is Mexico in July of this year as we partner with CIMMYT. 80 years from when Dr. Borlaug first went to CIMMYT in 1944 with the Rockefeller Foundation. In 2025, we continue Dr. Borlaug's journey and plan to launch a gathering in India. And in 2026, on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of the World Food Prize Foundation, we will step onto the African continent, just like Dr. Borlaug did. While I never had the opportunity to meet Dr. Borlaug, I'm honored to be a part of elevating his legacy. And I'm honored to know him through the vision and the voices of his daughter, Jeannie Borlaug-Laube, his granddaughter, Julie Borlaug, and his legacy keepers. People like Ambassador Terry Branstad, Ambassador Ken Quinn, Dr. Elsa Morano, Paul Schickler, Dr. Akin Adeshina, and the entire Ruan family. Were it not for the vision and the foresight of John Ruan Sr., his son, John Ruan III, and now the third generation, led by John Ruan IV and Rachel McLean, the World Food Prize would not exist. All of these individuals taught me the pageant of Dr. Borlaug's incredible journey that took him from his family farm in Cresco, Iowa, to the University of Minnesota, then to Mexico, then South Asia, and eventually to Africa. And now, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Bram Govaerts, another legacy keeper of Dr. Borlaug, and the Director General of the other organization that Dr. Borlaug helped found, CIMMYT. As Dr. Govaerts and I partner together for our second DialogUENEXT this July, please welcome him to share more about our collective vision.
Thank you so much, Mashal and Ambassador Terry Branstad, for the invitation today, of course, to launch this DialogUENEXT and to explain that this is not about one event, but about a journey. It is an honor to stand here today as the Director General of CIMMYT, the organization that the late Norman Borlaug fathered nearly 6 decades ago to combat hunger and malnutrition, and one of these CGIAR centers. I wouldn't have imagined when in 2014 I received the Borlaug Field Award that some years ago I would be standing here and thinking the same Mashal that was back then telling me what to do to receive the award. We now would be partnering up to the next DialgoueNEXT dialogue in CIMMYT. So when Mashal actually called, and those of you that have been to CIMMYT know that there's a statue of Dr. Borlaug. And when I look out of the window of my office, I can see the scientists and the workers from CIMMYT arrive in the morning. And sometimes you can see a few of them running by the statue like this, very fast. And it's actually because there is a belief in CIMMYT, and if you're not doing the right thing, Dr. Borlaug frowns when you pass by. If you do the right thing, he smiles. You can check for yourself if there's a lot of smiling going on lately or not. So when Mashal called and said, let's do a DialgoueNEXT, where we remember how Borlaug arrived 80 years ago as a young scientist to make a difference in a foreign country, in Mexico, and ended up feeding more than 1 billion lives and being still the inspiration today for many of us. But at the same time, repeating what he did, but in a very different way, to transform the systems with new thinking, with different people, with a young generation. I looked out of the window and he was smiling. So I immediately said yes to the idea of the World Food Prize. Let me then also share with you that I am convinced that CIMMYT is one of the most successful bilateral cooperations between the US and Mexico. It has successfully elevated and created peace for multiple millions of people on this globe. We have a shared history, and it goes back to that 1944 when young Norm Borlaug moved to Mexico within the Office of Special Studies, hosted by the Mexican government and funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. Over the next 20 years, Dr. Borlaug worked with Mexican farmers to raise wheat yields by developing high-yielding and disease-resistant semi-drought varieties that were then taken to India, Pakistan, and multiple other countries and saved them from a strong famine. So already back then, he was not only taking it to the farmer, he was developing it with the farmers. As a matter of fact, it's the farmers of Mexico in Ciudad Obregón that gave him the first land to do his research on. Those same farmers still today give us for 1 peso every year the facilities to have our biggest experimental station on. They're one of the strongest allies for the work we do. That's also where my Borlaug story happened. It was when Dr. Borlaug visited for the last time Obregón, because he still wanted to see the farmers and the fields. And I don't actually know if Jeannie knows, but she was there when I was giving a presentation as a very young student in front of a field of conservation agriculture, because I'm a soil scientist. And they were trying to move his wheelchair. And actually, he had his foot stuck in the wheel. So that's why the wheelchair could not move. And Jeannie actually wanted to take him out of the field to go back to the office because he had already been out there for a while. And so I saw his foot sticking in the wheel, and I wanted to intervene, and he just smiled and winked and said, don't say anything, just let me be here for a little more. And he succeeded, as usual, to be there for a little more. Then when he went back to the car, he called me, and he said, wonderful presentation. Great to have these long-term trials here on the station, but you need to take it to the farmer. And I'm only going to be happy and proud of you when you really take it to thousands and thousands of farmers. So that's when I promised I would. Dr. Borlaug went on after a few years of working with those Mexican farmers to become CIMMYT's first global wheat program director in 1964, and dedicated, as you know, the rest of his life at CIMMYT and many other organizations to give farmers access to improved farming practices and technologies. He definitely led by example, and every global wheat program director and CIMMYT director general, as a matter of fact, after him knew they would be held to very high standards of service, humbleness, and a focus on impact. Today, CIMMYT is very proud to celebrate our founder's birthday and the 10th anniversary of his statue unveiling at the US Capitol's National Statuary Hall. If you're going to want to go and check, you can see if he smiles at you or not. CIMMYT's impact on the farming systems and food security of the global South cannot be underestimated. Many of you here in the room are part of that CIMMYT. When I talk about CIMMYT, I don't talk about only the 1,600 staff members. I talk about every one of you, single organization, you know who I'm talking about, that is working with us to make it possible that 70% of the wheat grown in developing countries and more than 50% of the improved maize varieties are based on our breeding materials, many of which are developed in Mexico with strong support from the US government, from the US people. Thank you for allowing us to make a difference. At present, we are taking CIMMYT's partnership with the US government to a next level by implementing integrated development projects with a systems approach to agricultural transformation that looks at resilience for climate change and nutrition. An example is in Southern Africa, where we have developed an innovation delivery initiative together with State Department and USAID to bring in those VAX crops you have been hearing about, those opportunity crops that if we want maize and wheat systems to be nutritious, to be resilient, we need to open up space for those other crops. We need to put those other crops on our already existing research and innovation platforms and bring them back into the systems and value them as they were many, many years ago. That is an example of what Dr. Borlaug would do. Look at the crisis, analyze it, and come up with a transformational response. A response that today includes inclusion. A response that today looks at power relations and how they impede some of the decision making and taking that she wants to do in the field. There's a lot of data. We can move that data into information. But if we don't understand how information goes to decision taking and decision taking to making, we cannot get the transformational response. But there's also good news. If it wasn't for these kind of interventions, where only in 2023 we reached 1.4 million people, 44 of which are women, or because of the 17.5 million hectares today of drought-tolerant maize out there in Southern Africa, the devastating impact of the El Niño that is happening as we speak would even be bigger than it already is. Several of us went to those regions and could see some of those opportunity crops making a difference, could see some of those maize varieties yielding 40% more, which basically means something versus almost nothing. El Niño will be something we will have to live with: droughts, extreme temperatures, weather impacts. So we need to future-proof what we do right now. We have biodiversity, 28,000 different maize accessions and 140,000 different wheat accessions that when you come to CIMMYT 10 and 11 of July, you will be able to visit and look at in a gene bank. The collaboration with the Crop Trust helps that to turn that into not only safe for the world, but new varieties that farmers can use. A similar impact, imagine, or a similar effort, imagine, could make a difference in Central America and keep people there where their roots are. You can hear, we're implementing a new strategy at CIMMYT, a 2030 strategy that looks at nutrition and resilience, that looks at incorporating that gender equity and social inclusion. We hope also in the DialgoueNEXT to give you some of those results. But more importantly, We hope that you will be working with us to present in that DialogUeNEXT, in that DialogUeNEXT in CIMMYT, what we are going to do next. It's called DialogUeNEXT. It's not called Dialogue Previous. So we need to talk about what we're going to do next. What's your proposal? What's our proposal to put out there to transform those agri-food systems in an innovative way? What are the results of our recently launched Paula Cantor Gender and Development Hub? For those that knew Paula Cantor, she died at service with CIMMYT in Afghanistan due to a terrorist attack some years ago. And just recently, we launched a hub, a knowledge hub on gender and development in her name. Therefore, we will mark on the occasion of the 10 and 11 event, World Population Day. We will focus on transformative research and development for sustainably and inclusively increasing the global crop production, to raise resilience and nutrition in our agri-food systems. We will also commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Office of Special Studies. And during the two-day dialogue, we will explore how to ensure a food-secure and nutrition-secure growing population. Therefore, the title of this event is Seeds of Strength, Nurturing Farmer Resilience. You're all invited to start registering and participating through the World Food Prize Foundation and CIMMYT's DialogUeNEXT website, and we hope to see you in Mexico. But before I close off, and you run to your phone to subscribe or to register, I want to deeply thank the many, many women that have been significant in my journey. Several of you are in this room. But of the occasion of today, I of course want to thank Jeannie Borlaug, who brought Borlaug there and allowed him to stick his foot in the wheel of the wheelchair, but has done much, much more for the relationship with the farmers and for the global relationship of CIMMYT. I also want to remember a remarkable woman, which is actually my grandmother. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be standing here. She's almost 97. She told me 3 months ago that she thinks she's now getting a little bit old. Definitely not as old as the other men and women in her home. Definitely not, because they are really old. And she still every day checks on the newspaper what the weather is in Mexico or wherever I am. So if you want to know where I am in the world, don't call my secretary, call my grandmother, because she knows and she will tell you the weather with it. But she was also the one that always said, it doesn't matter what talent you have, as long as you groom it and you use it for good. Now, some of you will say, you told me that your grandfather was saying that. That's exactly the point. He was allowed to say it, but it actually came from her. She was the one telling him, that's what we need to tell our grandchildren. Speaking of grandchildren, I would like to introduce Julie Borlaug, who of course is taking the legacy of her grandfather forward. And I just want to quote one of her latest quotes. CIMMYT is leading the fight against famine and hunger, continuing Norman Borlaug's legacy. In the face of present challenges, our determination is fueled by the belief that fighting hunger is about justice, equity, and human dignity. Given the critical need for innovation and investment, we are committed to pioneering agricultural solutions that will feed and nourish the world, inspired by a tradition of tenacity and optimism. We ask that the world would join us, that you would join us in this vital quest to end hunger and create a future where no child, no family, no community is left behind. Julie, thank you for supporting CIMMYT and your faith in a bright future. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome in DialogUeNEXT in Mexico. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. How are you all? I'm Texan, so I have to throw y'all in. I want to begin real quickly by thanking the World Food Prize. And when I say the World Food Prize, of course, Ken Quinn, Mashal, Governor Branstad, Ambassador, Governor, I don't know which it is today. But and Paul Schickler, the entire staff, the Ruan family, everyone who has been so dedicated to changing the World Food Prize year by year and making it the World Food Prize. Let's remember that. We are the World Food Prize. We support all the other prizes, but we are the World Food Prize. So thank you all. I also want to thank the Peace Institute. This is a perfect place to hold this, and especially because of my grandfather's beliefs that no empty stomachs will cause peace. You cannot have peace on empty stomachs. I'd like to also thank everyone who is a part of the Borlaug legacy. That is all of you. If my grandfather was here, he would say he did not win the, I was going to say the World Food Prize, but that would have been impossible. He did not win the Nobel Peace Prize. It was his hunger fighters and everyone who played a part in that who won the Nobel Peace Prize. I'd also like to thank CIMMYT, any of the other CGs, the Borlaug Institute. I cannot forget, because Borlaug Institute's at Texas A&M, so I need to add University of Minnesota, Iowa State. Cornell claims him too. And if you look back at any pictures, when he was at Iowa State, he was in a Minnesota sweatshirt. When he was at A&M, he was in an Iowa State sweatshirt. And I think he did that on purpose, so everyone knew he didn't belong to one entity. He belonged to the mission of ending hunger and poverty. I also have to thank USAID, USDA, State Department, all the congressional members through the years who really fought for hunger and international development. So thank you. I also want to thank our farmers. I do know we have a female farmer in the room, Jocelyn, and any other farmers, please stand up. 2 female farmers. And 3, we have 3 farmers. Great. They're why we're here. We have to take it to the farmers, or what we do will not change anything. So let's always remember that. I also want to thank my women mentors. I once did an article about women mentors, and one of the females who was also a part of the article said she never had a female mentor in agriculture. And I thought, that is so sad. So mine have always been Dr. Elsa Morano, Catherine Bertini, Ruth Oyongo, Agnes Kalabata, Margaret Ziegler. I can name thousands of them, and that's because they stepped up and educated me, steered me along, corrected me often, and I got to thank my mom too, but more importantly, my grandmother. But reason why I bring that up is every female in this room, you need to become a mentor to the next generation so they become a mentor to the next generation. So please take the time to do that. So the DialogUeNEXT, as you have heard, is not a review of the past. It is movement forward. If my grandfather was here, he'd tell you all to get up and go into the fields right now. So we want to see action when we talk here. It's not just about the past. We don't want to talk about the past anymore. It's the past. Let's not talk about all the challenges. Let's talk about the solution, the metrics, the data, where we're actually making changes, so the people who are funding or those who don't understand the purpose of what we do are hearing us and hearing how we are moving the needle. I also, my grandfather's was about bringing up wheat and calories, really. It was calories that he was working on. We have a very different world. So when we say green revolution or the next revolution, it is not what was done in the 50s and 60s. It is about inclusivity, equity. It's about gender. It's about nutrition, innovation, and everyone's favorite new technology, AI. And it is about the farmer voices. Please, when you have an event, farmers need to be heard. They are a trusted source. Everything we do gets to the farmer, so let's always include a farmer's voice. I want to pivot to Peace Institute, the Peace Institute. It's really amazing we're here, especially on yesterday was his birthday. And by the way, thank you for all the kind things you all put on social media. I was the latest one to put anything on social media, so thank you for remembering him and talking about his legacy. We really love that, and it reminds the world the importance of agriculture. But there was a gentleman on who yesterday, I believe it was on Twitter, put something on that really made sense. And he said, at the micro level, a hungry man, I'm going to change that to person, is a hungry person. At the macro level, a hungry region leads to unrest and wars. And my grandfather always said, those type of things are fertile seeds for isms, terrorism, and more. Fighting hunger is about justice, equity, and human dignity. So as Bram said in my quote, we'd like you to join us to end hunger, create a future where no child, no woman, family, no farmer, no community is left behind. I've got to tell you a side note. When my grandfather won the Congressional Gold Medal, all the leaders of the Congress were on stage. And let me remind you, they all agreed that day on the importance of agriculture. So that might have been the last time we had a full agreement. But the funny thing was, he spoke for 20 minutes, he had 2 minutes. And Nancy Pelosi's team, she was the speaker, was poking me because I was sitting behind him. And they were like, you've got to stop him. You've got to stop him. And I was like, can you play music? And I was sitting behind looking at my mom doing, like, so she could do that to them. Probably not a good sign to do with all the leadership in front of Congress and the president. President Bush was there. So I leaned forward to President Bush and I said, can you stop him? They want him to stop. And he leaned back and he said, this isn't my award. And right at that time, my grandfather went into isms, hunger and poverty. And President Bush leaned back and said, don't stop him now. So, but the important thing why I make that point is we are in DC. And on the side of a US focus, let's all remember hunger and poverty aren't on any side. They're a place where we can all come together and end. So let's help promote that as we move out. We work within the DC community and abroad. One thing I'd like to talk about is just reminding you that imagine a world where ag thrives and peace is the norm. Do y'all get that, Norm Borlaug? I did not like that we kept saying the norms, you know, where we ignore agriculture. So we got to have a replacement word so we don't use that. But I think it's really important that we remember that, especially in this day and age with all the conflicts going on, how it affects agriculture, those who are suffering. And remember, those children are innocent of all of these things. And we don't need famines. They're political. They're beyond that. I'm not going to get into that, but we can prevent famines. We grow enough food. And I know that we need to talk about infrastructure. Well, in the US, we need to talk about a new bridge today, but we need to talk about infrastructure, cold chain storage, roads, and beyond that, to get food to those in need. I always say, take it to the farmer, as Bram said, and those were my grandfather's last words. But I also add, take it to the public. If we need public support to do what we do, and it's so important, we have to have people understand us. Here within DC, other governments, philanthropists, just the public needs to understand the role we play. And I want to take a moment and embarrass someone and thank him. My fiance is here. I know y'all never thought it was going to happen. So Matt is here. I already messed up the ring, so I'm getting it back this weekend, so he already knows it's going to be a rough deal. But the reason why I bring this up, I met him at the Global Farmer Network board meeting at CIMMYT. So I think my grandfather played a role in that, and agriculture brought us together. So thank you for putting up with me, my continual talk about agriculture and all you mean to our family. And I want to thank all of you again. We need to remember this is not reviewing the past of my grandfather. This is reviewing the future of what everyone in this room is going to do. And we need to talk about our metrics. We need to stop talking to each other and talk about the action we are doing in the field. So please join us at the Borlaug, that's not BorlaugNEXT, the DialogueNEXT at CIMMYT. For fundraising purposes, you can buy this scarf. I'm kidding. This is a CIMMYT scarf, so I just want to represent wheat and maize today. But thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening. I do need to backtrack about one thing when we say bringing gender and equality. A few years ago, this was a long time ago at USAID, we had I'm all of a sudden on staff at USAID, but there was a program that we talked about the positives and negatives of our programs. And there happened to be a program that was, I believe, in Guatemala. And it was working with women and empowering women. But what the mission and all the workers figured out, as these women got stronger, and as the program went to village, the men realized what was going on. And they didn't want them coming to these programs and empowering the women because of the cultural change. So we must also bring along, when we talk about gender, we must bring along the boys. The young boys starting at an early age to understand that equality is so important. So again, thank you for having me, and we will see you in, not Obregon, we're going to CIMMYT headquarters. Please come, because if you've never seen a seed vault, it will change your life about the power of what CIMMYT and the other CGs are doing. So thank you for having me, and have a great afternoon session. I will be back, so thank you.